Hello everyone and welcome to this very special edition of Westmonster Uncensored with me, Patrick Christys, and as you can see I've been joined today by none other than Lord Pearson, so thank you very much for joining us today. Now in the top half of this show we are going to be discussing the depraved issue of mass child sexual exploitation taking place across the United Kingdom. But later in the show, we're going to be going on, when Michael rejoins us, we're going to be going on to talk about the Brexit latest, all the conspiracy theories flying around about that, and of course, spiralling violent crime around London. So make sure you do stay tuned. Now, but firstly, I've been joined, as you can see, by Lord Pearson, who has been an outspoken figure on the issue of child sexual exploitation taking place across the United Kingdom, apparently majorly committed by gangs of Asian men, predominantly of Pakistani heritage. You've been an outspoken figure on this in the Lords, and you've raised it there. So I'm going to start by giving you guys some context before we go into some question and answer on this. We want a lot of your comments flying in. It is an interactive live show here at Westmonster, and don't forget to give us a big thumbs up and a like if you like what you see. But firstly, to give you guys some context, I want to show you a clip of Lord Pearson speaking in the House of Lords. So here is what he had to say.
My Lords, I fear that reply is shamefully inadequate, because these girls are usually raped several times a day. And so if we accept the views of our lead police officer for child protection, of Rotherham's MP, and of the recent Jay and Quilliam reports, we seem to be looking at millions of rapes of white and Sikh girls by Muslim men, only 222 of whom have been convicted since 2005. So, my Lords, will the government ask our Muslim leaders whether the perpetrators can claim that their behaviour is sanctioned in the Quran, and to issue a fatwa against it? And second, my Lords, will the government encourage a national debate about the various interpretations of Islam? Can we talk about Islam without being accused of hate crime?
So Lord Pearson there raising some issues regarding this child sexual exploitation that we've seen across the United Kingdom and its relation, it would appear, to perhaps gangs of these Asian men, or particularly with regards to Lord Pearson, in regards to Islam specifically. Now, I'm going to show you another clip before we really do get stuck into this interview. Seen your comments are rolling in already. A lot of love online for you here, Lord Pearson, so far. People just saying that they are a big fan of what you've got to say. But look, I'm just going to show you a quick clip now of some of the reaction to what was said there from Lord Pearson. So take it away. Let's see what other people had to say.
Does the Minister, does my noble friend agree with me that all members of this House should be working to eradicate all forms of hate speech? Yeah. And I note that the noble Lord Pearson, is desperate to get into this question, and maybe if he does have the opportunity to do so, he could explain whether he thinks it's appropriate for members of this House to be hosting the likes of Tommy Robinson within the precincts of this House at a time when there is an increased risk in relation to hate crime, and members of the other House have been receiving hate letters. Yeah.
Well, I couldn't agree more with my noble friend that this isn't just a governmental thing, it's not just societal, but you know, as legislators for this country, we have got a strong leadership role to take, and it does dismay me when I see that certain quite extreme people are actually being invited into the Palace of Westminster to propagate some of their hate.
If I could, my Lords, I have been mentioned, my Lords, if I could stick to the question. Does hate speech include criticising Islam or any of the world's great religions, as opposed to insulting their adherents? Does our legislation make that distinction, and if not, shouldn't it do so?
Well, there's a clear distinction between expressing one's own opinion, and that can offend people. There is a right to offend, but there is not a right to propagate speech which actually goes to a particular characteristic, whether that be race, religion, disability or sexuality, which actually promotes the hatred against that person.
Introducing the
Now, you've seen what's been said there. We've jumped up to nearly 1,000 live viewers, so thank you very much, guys. Please do give us a like and a share, and don't forget to visit westmonster.com/support if you like what we do. We are discussing now child sexual exploitation, in particular with regard to the Asian/Muslim community, because Lord Pearson here has spoken out about it. You're getting a lot of love online. Barbara Berry saying, well done, Lord Pearson. Alexander Smith saying, well said, continue to speak out. Now, look, I want to ask you directly, what is your main motivation, Lord Pearson, for speaking out about this issue and being specific and linking it back to maybe the religious element behind it or the cultural element behind it? Can you discuss that bit for us?
Well, I think I'd like to start by saying that everything I'm doing in this area is because I want to start being allowed to talk about Islam. I want a national debate about what Islam really is. And I'm no expert on Islam, but I have noticed that you can't talk about Islam.
Okay.
As soon as you try to do so, you're almost immediately accused of hate crime. Whereas you can say what you like about any other religion. You can say what you like about the virgin birth, the miracles, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. But as soon as you start to saying here, this Muhammad, is he really such a peaceful man? Are there not elements of Islam that we ought to be able to debate openly in the same way we can about any other religion? And if Islam is not a religion of peace, what are the vast majority of our Muslim leaders? What is our Muslim community doing about it? Because at the moment, they seem to me just to be complaining whenever you try to talk about it.
And what's your pushback been on this? Because some people have said, look, the remarks that you've made have maybe got certain racist connotations attached to it. That must be something that you deal with a lot. What would you say to people that say, look, you're racist? Yeah, what do you say to that?
Racism, forgive me, is just about the stupidest thing you can say about it. Because Islam is present on every race on the planet, more or less. And so whatever else it is, it's not racism. And also I worry when you talk about Asian men and men of Pakistani origin, nobody dares use the word Muslim. But the common denominator in the grooming gang things and all the rest of it that you talk about is actually Islam. We are talking about something within Islam. We are talking about Muslim men and the grooming gang things. And nobody seems to want to say that. Asian men, isn't that rather insulting to all Asian men in the world who aren't Muslims, let alone terrorists or grooming gangers?
But then would the same not apply to, so lots of Muslim people are obviously not involved in this child sexual grooming scandal that we've seen across the country. So is that not maybe a sweeping generalisation to say that Islam is maybe the root cause of this, as opposed to individuals who happen to be Muslim?
Well, that's why I want to talk about it. That's why I want a debate to go on to discover that very point. And of course, the vast majority of our Muslims are friendly, they do good works, they're lovely people, but what are they doing to control their violent co-religionists? That's what I want to know. And I want us all to be able to talk about it with them and with ourselves, because at the moment, very few people know anything about Islam at all. Now, I'm not an expert, but I have learned a bit, and I am advised by 4 people who really are Quranic experts.
Okay, now look, I want to just show you guys some stories that we've been doing here at Westmonster, because I actually personally visited Telford in the wake of the Telford grooming scandal, which some are saying could be potentially the worst on record, although that's got stiff competition from the likes of Rotherham and Rochdale, etc. So we can see there on your screen the story there about that I did about Telford. We've also got a lot of other stories that we've done as well, so we're going to move on to some of the others there. There's one that came out today about Oxford, or came out last night I think, about potential grooming gang in Oxford. Again, several victims there. 7 men guilty of running, quote, a massive child sex ring in Oxford. Similar, as we've seen already, to the Rochdale and Rotherham scandals, of course, and Derby and Newcastle, the list goes on. But then I want to come on to another story as well. Now, within this article that you're about to see on your screens there on Westmonster, there was a figure that was revealed within that story that said that basically it's believed that the particular group that was accused of or found guilty of child sexual exploitation in Rotherham, 80% of these were men of Pakistani heritage. Now, that's particularly interesting, I suppose, if you're looking at sourcing maybe where this where this issue could potentially lie. We're discussing about that today. But crucially, to lend a bit of weight to that, because it's not just us coming and throwing these accusations out. Jack Straw, of course, former Home Secretary, came out on the BBC and gave a comment to that effect. So I'm just going to play you a clip now before we go into some more of your questions to Lord Pearson, just from Jack Straw. So here's what he had to say about the issue of grooming gangs in the UK.
And Nazir is right to say, when I mentioned this, in fact, at the beginning of 2011, and said it was a Pakistani problem, the balloon went up, but I mean, after a while it deflated, and then a lot of Pakistanis said to me, okay, I mean, some of them said, why didn't you say Asians? So I said to them, listen, pal, the reason I didn't say Asian, because I'm not talking about Asians, I'm talking about Pakistanis. And you guys within the Pakistani community, including the leaders who've known what's been going on but have not been willing to come out, have got to confront this. It goes back to some of the nature of Pakistani society in the villages from which these people come from. It's very complicated. Some people attribute it to Islam. That's not the case at all. It's a cultural problem about the way in which this particular segment of Pakistani men in this country happen to regard white girls, and they see them, as I said 7 years ago, and I'm happy to repeat, they see them as easy meat.
Okay, guys, so sorry, I was just readjusting Lord Pearson's microphone there, that you can see. Now, look, you've heard what Jack Straw said there. Now, interestingly there, Jack Straw seems to be saying that this is not a problem with Islam, it's more of a cultural thing, and I'll be intrigued to know what you guys think of that. Obviously, that's been a question that's been bandied about at the minute, but I think, Lord Pearson, you have a view, don't you, that you think this is not so much a cultural thing, it's more of a thing directly linked to Islam, which a lot of people maybe find a bit hard to swallow. Can you explain what your thought process is there for us, please?
Well, that's why I want to talk about Islam. I mean, the normal quote is, Islam is a religion of peace. But I've been looking at it for seven years now, and I'm no expert. But I think it may not be. And in which case, what can we do about it? And we can do nothing. The only thing we can do is to talk about it and persuade our Muslim leaders, our Muslim communities, to take this thing on and clearly declare that some of this stuff, for instance, grooming gangs, which are at least tolerated in at least 4 verses in the Quran, are not part of Islam, and the grooming gang people should be thrown out of Islam. A fatwa should be issued against them. But of course, to do that, you need to get the Muslim community together. And that is very difficult in Islam, because there's no pope in Islam. You can't get hold of a leader and say, look, why don't you lot do this? So what is needed is a great council of our Muslim leaders to come together and take head on these verses in the Quran about grooming gangs, to take head on the Muslim tenet, tradition, that the later verses in the Quran cancel the earlier verses in the Quran. In other words, the verses of peace trump, get rid of the verses of the sword. And there's also Taqiyya and Al-Hijra, but I'd better not bore you about that unless you'd like me to.
Well, no, it's an interesting point to make. Just coming to some of your comments, guys, and they are coming in thick and fast. We've got about 900 live viewers still, so thank you very, very much. Just some people saying, look, basically there's bad people in every single walk of society. We can't let the fear of racism get in the way of discussing a pertinent issue. And loads of your comments coming in. So yeah, please do keep those. Please do come in. We've had one here, I believe, on Twitter from @JazzFedA, just saying public discussion on Islam is perfectly reasonable to have. So obviously I want to know what your comments are on that. Carl Shadbolt on Facebook. Where are the feminists? Where are the lefties? Where are Antifa? I think that's in relation to obviously the fact that there's been various cases, of course, of child sexual exploitation, particularly with regards to young women, and there hasn't seemed to be some massive monumental feminist outrage. And yeah, Vince Edwards saying, hurry up with Brexit, don't you worry, we're coming on to that later. But look, in terms of where you're coming at this from now, what do you think specifically needs to be done, in your opinion, to stop this issue of child sexual exploitation taking place across the UK?
Well, first of all, we've got to understand where it comes from. And secondly, the government have started doing some very small things. I mean, I think that there are 700,000 people in the United Kingdom, mostly Muslim women actually, who can't speak English. Well, it would be a help if that is carried through. We should know what is going on in our mosques and in our madrasas, which are the
You
the
believe
schools.
that there should be some kind of inspection into maybe the Muslim education system ongoing in Britain, don't you?
That's where it all starts. And in the mosques. And I personally would require all sermons in all mosques and all lessons in all madrasas to be held in English.
Okay.
And then we'd know what's going on. I mean, I've asked the government, do they know what's going on in the madrasas? They don't. They don't know how many there are, and they don't at the moment intend to find out. Well, I think they should, because this is the future.
And you made some comments, so I'm just going to wrap this up now with regards to you, but one last thing I want to get across from you is you made some comments saying that you feared that if this problem maybe wasn't dealt with, there could be riots or massive public upheaval. Can you go into a bit more detail about why you particularly think that could be the case and what could happen, really?
If you take the football lads against terrorism, the veterans against terrorism, who only set up after the Manchester bomb, and they've now got over 1 million followers, they have marched. 74,000 of them marched in London last August. Entirely peaceful, entirely anti-racist, entirely good, quiet people who just want the police to be given more to stand up against terrorism, and they want more to be done about veterans and so on too. But nobody listens. And the trouble is in this country, with our present rather non-democratic system of electing people to the House of Commons, very non-democratic, that if you can't get the votes to frighten the political class, they won't give a damn. 1 million people marched against Iraq. I don't know how many 100,000 the Countryside Alliance. Tony Blair merrily went in and ruined that part of the world for years, the Iraq invasion. The country's fox hunting was still banned. So marching is all very well, but I fear if this growing movement, this great movement against terrorism, and most terrorists are Islamists, then that will turn to frustration, and before long we'll have riots. So I'd like to prevent that.
Well, look, guys, we've had a lot of your comments coming in. Chris Hackett here just saying he believes that the Muslim community should be doing more to condemn what's going on. I'd be intrigued to hear what more people think there. Maybe, do people think the Muslim community is doing enough to prevent what's going on? Let's see what you think about that. Now, we are shortly, in 1 second or two, we're going to go to a little break, and we're going to get stuck into some of the rest of the issues that have been taking place, like Brexit and spiralling knife crime, etc. So thank you very much, Lord Pearson, for coming in to share your views with us, and hopefully we'll have you back at some point to discuss it.
Thank you.
Guys, we're going to go to a little break now, but do stay with us. We will be back shortly.
Brexit will be an immensely damaging process.
A meaningful vote has been promised. This must be a decisive vote.
If there isn't a majority in Parliament, then it's got to go back to the people.
Or order a referendum so the public may approve what has been determined.
I'm rather hoping that Jeremy Corbyn will move in the direction of a referendum on the final terms.
I think that there should be a second referendum.
It'll be a completely new choice. It'll be a choice between what we have now within the European Union and this new deal that's proposed that we didn't know back in 2016.
I think better we have a general election. Better we have a general election.
In which case we'd have a general election.
Here at Westmonster.com, we're committed to exposing the establishment's attempt to do away with the will of the people and reverse Brexit. You can count on us to keep fighting the good fight, but we need your help. Please visit westmonster.com/support and help us defeat the establishment. Thank you.
Well, guys, it's a game of two halves, and we're back now. Great to have you here. We're going to be talking about Brexit now and the latest shooting in London, sadly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, over the weekend, it seemed to be another barrage of conspiracy theories and anti-Brexit waffle. I just want to bring a tweet up here that we did from Westmonster the weekend. Very, very important here. You're hearing a lot from the Remain side at the moment. Crazy conspiracy theories. Let's just remember here what the Leave side had to contend with during the referendum. And this isn't conspiracy theory, this is fact. The Remain side, backed by a £9 million government leaflet, They had a Treasury recession warning, a punishment budget. They had the backing of Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Citigroup, Morgan Stanley, the IMF, OECD, CBI, 103 university vice-chancellors, and even President Obama, do you remember that, back of the queue, came over to have a little dig about why we shouldn't vote leave. And I'm getting a little bit sick and tired with this, this sentiment of these people moping around, trying to come up with this excuse, that excuse, that you're all silly, you were manipulated, you were lied to, you were misled. They just can't face up to the cold half truth, guys, which is that the majority of people in this country want us to be self-governing. They want us to control our borders. They want us to take back control, and that's what we've done. And these pathetic conspiracy theories we're now seeing, which, by the way, when you see what's going on in the world at the minute in terms of violence on the streets of London and elsewhere, really it says a lot for the media, I think.
Yeah.
That so much of the coverage over the weekend has been on these ridiculous conspiracy theories. When, as I said, the odds were stacked in the favour of Remain. The money was stacked in the favour of Remain. The government, Whitehall, much of these big corporate interests, all backing Remain. It was a major upset victory for Leave to One. It was a people's uprising, and yet you get painted this picture as it was some sort of grand conspiracy. If anything, the conspiracy was on the other side, as I say. Government put over 9 million quid into a leaf that went through every door. You may have had it, you may have burnt it, you may have thrown it away, but it went there. And I would argue, yeah, the referendum result was skewed. It was skewed in the favour of Remain in terms of this government leaf that cost, as I say, over 9 million quid. If that leaflet hadn't gone out, Leave would have done even better, haven't we? So I'm getting a little bit sick and tired, but let me know what you think, guys. I think this hysteria from some of the Ramonas is becoming more and more deranged by the week.
We've had some comments flying in, so do keep them flying in. As I've said, Sally Emilio's been in touch. Say Brexit feels further away now than it did the day after the referendum. And I think that seems to be a sentiment that we get a lot here on Westmonster Uncensored from people that voted for Brexit. They do seem to think that they've seen it stifled, maybe watered down to oblivion, and that actually they're not confident that anything like the kind of Brexit that they voted for is going to be delivered. And I want your views on this. Do you feel as though Brexit, the kind of Brexit that you wanted, is going to happen? Let me know what you think.
Rees on Facebook saying, Leave Project Fear was a complete lie to mislead the electorate. Yeah, I mean, look, the Project Fear from the other side was unbelievable in terms of Remain. We're going to go to a little bit at the end here, the last story, the bit of good news, because we heard that, London was going to go, we were going to have a recession, we were going to have, the Remain side like to lick their wounds quite a lot, those that are left on that hardcore EU side, and there's less and less of them. They like to lick their wounds and be very, very sore losers. But it's becoming deranged, guys. We'll bring up another tweet here. This is what Leave.eu did earlier today. Basically, helpfully pointing out, if you look at the amount of money spent, you see a discrepancy. £28 million if you include that government leaflet for Remain, 28,300,000, and on the Leave side it was about 13,400,000. So if you're talking about some sort of unfair advantage here, let's not talk about this whole conspiracy theory of, people were misled and there was some Facebook advertising or whatever, this garbage. Look at the numbers. Look at the government machine. Look at all the big corporate interests, the Morgan Stanleys, the Goldman Sachs, all getting involved, all throwing the money in. I think, guys, this is completely, people have completely lost touch with reality and public opinion on this. I think that the mainstream media bubble now is bigger than it ever has been. This obsession now over some sort of grand conspiracy with Brexit is just gone completely nuts. They're obsessed with it, as I say, and I think public opinion has moved on. And I'll back that up quickly before we go to some comments.
Fine.
Just to go a story we did this morning, Wales. Just to give you an example back in the real world of what people actually think rather than this bubble mentality. Sky poll shows a number of things of what Welsh voters think, including 55% of people in Wales think the UK was right to vote for Brexit in hindsight. So, any sort of suggestion that there's a groundswell of opinion against Brexit, that people feel misled, that people didn't know what they're voting for, is complete bollocks, right? It doesn't bear out under any degree of scrutiny whatsoever. And I'm just getting tired with seeing people acting as if they're sort of leading the charge of a people's revolt against Brexit. It doesn't exist. It's built on quicksand. It's a figment of their imagination because they're using this as a coping mechanism because they cannot hack the fact that they lost. Right, that's my little bit done.
Well, Mark Ward's been in touch, just saying drain the Westminster swamp.
Don't drain the Westminster one.
Alison Stubbs, regular on the show, always pleasure to have you on. Alison, saying every day that passes feels more and more frustrating. As to why we haven't left. May keeps messing us about. And Sandra Nelson saying the Leave.eu campaign was heavily supported by the British public, voluntarily, which says something. And Marie LaChance, another one, calling for the swamp to be drained. So there we are. That's what your views are, but please do keep them piling in. As ever, we had great engagement so far on this show. Don't forget, if you like what you see as well, do visit westmonster.com/support. I've done various investigations for us so far here, and it's your funding that helps me do that. It also helps us keep promoting this type of news agenda that you guys would like to see. So please do give generously and help us spread the word.
Yeah, do give us a retweet, do give us a like, do visit westmonster.com/support after this show. We're going to go to another story now, and you'll remember, and Nigel Farage, ahead of his time yet again when it comes to Brexit, he warned, didn't he, about this push for a second referendum, that the battle may not be over for Brexiteers, that we must be ready. And you look at what the Labour Party are now doing. Again, guys, you can go and see this on westmonster.com. Labour's Keir Starmer, set to make a speech today. And let me just read you some quotes of what he's expected to say. And listen to this quite carefully. If Parliament rejects the Prime Minister's deal, that cannot give licence to her or the extreme Brexiteers in her party to allow the UK to crash out without an agreement. That would be the worst of all possible worlds. He'll go on to say, our amendment would make it clear that should the Prime Minister's deal be defeated, it must be for Parliament to say what happens next, not the executive. So you can see where this is going, aren't you guys, right? You've got the Labour Party, Len McCluskey, the trade union boss, has already said he wants Labour MPs to vote down the deal, come what may, quite literally, because he wants May to be taken down. Labour, people in Labour desperate to do whatever it takes to bring down the government, to have an election and try and put Jeremy Corbyn into number 10. You've now got Keir Starmer, who is their main man on Brexit, let's not forget, effectively saying that if the deal is voted against in Parliament, that it doesn't mean that we leave on no deal. What it would mean, in their opinion, is that MPs would then have the power to determine what happens next. It's a complete power play, and what it is, it's a brazen attempt to strip away the mandate of the people as voted for on June 23rd, 2016, and to hand it to MPs, most of whom didn't want to leave the EU, certainly a majority of whom, still a lot of them making an argument against leaving the customs union, the single market and all the rest of it. And this is a complete power play by Labour, I'm afraid, to basically strip away that mandate from people and say, well, thanks for the vote, but we rejected what Theresa May's brought back from Brussels. We don't want the deal, which means basically we get to decide what happens next. We get to decide if we stay in the single market. We get to decide actually if we want to stop Brexit. That's the implication of what's being said here. And actually it couldn't be any more serious as far as I can see. It's politicians basically saying openly now, if we want to reject the deal, we'll basically decide what happens next.
Well, Ray Evans has been in touch saying, I fear for the country if the government betrays the people. Every day we do not leave, the more people are getting frustrated, and that will overflow. So Marcus Fu saying, Labour wants to destroy the Tories and quash Brexit so they can get into power. It's all about the power and the wealth, which seems to validate there what Michael was saying. It's interesting to see what you guys make of this, really, because the Labour Party has flip-flopped a bit on the Brexit issue, or quite a lot actually on the Brexit issue. And you do have to look at, how's he actually now, Jeremy Corbyn in the Labour Party, have they put the personal power over principle, which clearly could, you would imagine, have the potential to come back to bite them among some sections of the electorate at the next election. But we will, of course, have to wait and see. Anyway, their position might have changed next week. You never know.
Yeah. I mean, something else I know you guys care a lot about, which has been completely skirted over as well, is the issue of open borders, of freedom of movement, of border controls. A lot of people went and voted leave to take back control of borders. In fact, I would argue it is the defining issue of the referendum, what won it for leave. It's basically been kicked into the long grass. You don't really hear anyone talking about it. They prefer to skirt over it. Just an incredible revelation at the weekend. And again, we can bring this up on westmonster.com. Go and check it out over there. Government now basically put out an announcement that Croatian citizens will be able to seek and obtain employment in the UK on the same basis as currently enjoyed by all other citizens when the current arrangement ends on the 30th of June. Says Caroline Noakes, the government immigration minister, going on to say, we will not discriminate between nationals of the EU member states in our implementation of the citizens' rights deal. Croatian citizens will be able to apply for settled status on the same terms as all other EU citizens. So, let's just lay this out. You've got a Conservative government who have said their stated policy is to reduce net migration to the tens of thousands, of which they're still a million miles away from. And yet they're about to extend full freedom of movement and the right to stay during the so-called transition implementation period to another country, which is over 4 million strong. So how are you going to reduce net migration down to your stated government policy when actually you're opening up the borders to another country? It's like another complete contradiction. I don't know why they're doing it. I guess they're doing it because it's the EU rules that you can only have a certain, go on the current policy for a certain amount of time, and then you have to have justification, all the rest of it. But the fact of the matter is, people voted Brexit to take back control of borders, and this, I'm afraid, is opening up the borders even more. It's the exact opposite, I think, of what a lot of Brexiteers want to see.
Yeah, well, look, there's a lot of anger from you guys here, really, about these kind of apparent Brexit backtracks and things like that, really. John Edwards just saying we should just walk away, end of. A lot of people saying, criticising the Labour Party actually about this, in particular Dave Taylor saying, how can anyone vote for that clown Corbyn? And Jay Roden saying, we asked to leave, not strike a new deal. Since when did leave mean remain? So clearly among the Westmonsters, as I call you now, our viewers, there is a feeling of betrayal and there is a feeling of concern about what kind of Brexit that you feel that you might go, might be about to get, I suppose.
Yeah, we've got a stable Harley mum saying good luck on Brexit from the USA. Always lovely to have a US audience, international audience. Guys, do let us know where you're watching from right now. We'll give you a little shout out.
Build up a map of Westmonster.
Yeah, no, it's nice to know there's sort of a global audience watching. In terms of our perspective on Brexit, I mean, people want to see action, I think is basically the feeling in the country, is that...
want to see their vote enacted, don't they?
Yeah, they've had enough of the talk and the jib-jab and all that. They want to know when we're controlling our borders, they want to know when we're not abiding by EU laws, and it looks it's not going to be until 2021 at the earliest. And of course, you've got the Labour Party and Ramonas all around doing everything they can to try and water things down, to delay things, to kick things back, and the Labour Party seems to be weakening by the day.
Supporting from US, that's Anne Conklin and Paula Eastman, Florida, USA here.
Lovely,
well, hello to you.
What's the weather like over there? I'd love
I
to
imagine
know.
it's much better than it is here.
We're doing all right. We're not doing too bad. Not doing too bad. It's always good in Westminster. The sun always shines when the Westmonster streams.
We've got someone in Scotland as well. They'll know all about the bad weather up there, but thank you very much for tuning in.
Guys, just to remind you, by the way, Uncensored is 1 o'clock Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm sure you know by now. I'm sure you've got it down in your diary. You've got it coming up on your phone. You wouldn't dare miss an episode, but just to remind you, it's the same time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, unless stated on our social media channels on the day. Now, just to go to one of your Brexit heroes, Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Drum roll, please, for the Mogg.
Westmonster.com, we've got the story there. And by the way, guys, in all of our stories, do go and get yourself signed up on the old Red Alert email.
Yes.
We won't bother you with any rubbish. It's just some good stories during the week to keep you updated with everything that's going on. And we've also there got the support function in our stories at westmonster.com/support. Please do support us if you back what we do. Mogg set to make a speech this week. They briefed out some lines. Apparently, Mogg set to say they have found that their jobs, speaking about workers, basically saying that workers and poorest are going to benefit the most from Brexit, saying they have found that their jobs have been taken by migrants from the EU. It'd be wrong to criticise these migrants who are extremely admirable to move halfway across a continent to a country where you do not speak the language. To work hard to provide a better standard of living with your family is a really noble thing to do. But the effect has been to lower wages for the least well-off in our own society. They have found that their jobs have been taken by migrants from the EU. Again, I would argue this was the defining issue of the referendum. I would argue it's something that's been buried, it's not being talked about, and I think there's quite a lot of anger building up. So you're going to see a little bit of action this week, it seems, from Mogg, who's going to try and highlight this. And yeah, highlight the fact that, and we've seen some of this already, if you have lower migration, if you tighten the labour market, you raise wages. It's supply and demand, guys. It's very, very simple. If you have a massive, massive, unlimited pool of unskilled workers that employers can choose from that come from across the EU, guess what? Employers never have any incentive to raise wages because they don't need to, because people are happy to work at that time. If you want to see British workers get paid more money, we've got to control migration, we've got to tighten that labour market.
Well, look, Sandra Blackmore Wood's been in touch saying this is the only news worth listening to, lads. Well, thank you very much.
What an endorsement, cracker.
Paul Ammett as well was asking me if I wore a tie because I've just met a lord. No, Paul, if you keep watching the show regularly, and said I normally do unless I've got a bit of a throat on, but no, thank you for noticing my fashion tips. Anyway, I really appreciate that. And Tanis saying Jacob Rees-Mogg needs to shout louder. And I wonder what you guys think about this, because is there a sense that even the hard Brexiteers, I suppose, that do have a platform, that being that they are members of Parliament, are they shouting as loud as you would like? Would you like to see more pressure being put on the government, I suppose, to stick to what you regard as your version of Brexit, maybe what you regard as what you voted for? Do you feel let down, maybe even by the most hardline of Brexiteers? Could more be being done? Let us know what you think.
Just moving away from Brexit now, I'm going to go into something we talk about a lot. You know, it's not something we want to be talking about, guys, but it's something that is a reality. Because we've just seen again today another shooting in London. We keep doing these stories. A man shot dead in Hackney, I believe this was yesterday evening. Another young man, 26-year-old man, found on the streets with gunshot wounds in Hackney on a residential street. Paramedics and police attended, but I think the man died at the scene. Neighbour quoted by the Standard as saying, "I was just sitting on the couch and heard this huge bang that made my dog go crazy. The window shook, it was so close. I am petrified now." This follows on from 8 people having been stabbed or shot to death in London since March the 14th. And, you know, we're going to keep banging this drum, guys, because frankly, I think one of the most appalling things I've seen recently in terms of the media and politics is how little this is being discussed. Why is this not leading the news? We get all of this ridiculous bollocks about conspiracy theories and everything, and yet we hear virtually nothing in the national media about people getting shot, about people getting stabbed, about people being killed. You know, before this it was 8 from March the 14th. Another person here shot in a residential street. In their 20s. This is an absolute national emergency. This level of violence is frankly obscene. That we're seeing this in the capital city, that we're seeing this in London, is shocking, isn't it, Patrick? I mean, we do these stories, guys, because, as I say, I just cannot believe how little national coverage this is getting.
Well, for example, guys, I think there was a story that we ran last week at Westmonster.com, just saying that London's ambulance service, the air ambulance service, is now dealing with more call-outs to stabbings and shootings than they are for road traffic collisions. Now, that's not because there's been a massive decrease in the number of road traffic collisions, put it that way. Clearly, knife crime and gun crime, etc., is spiralling out of control. And, you know, it is a basic element of law and order in the capital. And it does make you wonder why more isn't being made of this. If the same number of people that had been killed just through knife crime or gun crime, even in the last 2 weeks, actually, in the capital and across the country, it's not just London-centric here, if they had been killed by, say, a particular terror attack or an incident, say, you know, some kind of fireworks display, something terrible happened, or there'd been something like that, maybe a theme park or something, that number of people have been injured or died as a result of one particular accident. We would presumably be seeing inquests into things, we'd presumably be seeing things being constantly, relentlessly raised on the news, talk about new procedures being put in place, but we're not. We see the odd kind of trendy YouTube video or Twitter video from Sadiq Khan's office, or well, but not any massive concerted efforts to try and, it would seem, stem this scourge on our streets. And I think it is a worry when you look at, you know, when you're living in what's supposed to be a very sophisticated first world country, and there is that feeling that you're actually not safe to leave your house anymore for fear of these random attacks. And a lot of these attacks do seem to be random. That is a big concern.
We got Patricia here saying, thank you very much for your comment here, saying one man stabbed outside Tesco's in Kennington on Saturday. Don't forget, a lot of these attacks that are going on, those ones are just in terms of fatalities. There'll be a lot of stabbings, maybe even be shootings that you don't actually ever hear about. So that's what I'm saying here. 8, I think it was, what's the number? 8 dead since March 14th, plus another guy, as I said, gunned down yesterday in Hackney. And another story we did, which absolutely disgusted me, you may have seen it, was on in Seven Sisters in North London. There was a 14-year-old boy shot. You know, and why is that not a national? Why is that not national? You probably haven't even heard about it. But when you've got 14-year-olds getting shot, when you've got this amount of people being stabbed and shot to death, you've got massive problems in your society. And you can, you know, you can run these little social media campaign videos of, I'll turn away from knives and the rest of it. But I'm afraid that isn't going to solve the problem. We need police on the streets. We need mandatory sentences, tough sentences for carrying knives. And we need to start locking more people up. We need to start striking fear into criminals and thugs who are regularly walking around with weapons now, with this gang mentality. And I think an increasingly lawless London. Because police numbers have been cut. We've got a soft approach to crime. And when is the last time you heard a politician in Britain say we need to lock more people up, give them tougher penalties, and really crack down on this? You very, very rarely hear it now.
Well, look, guys, actually, someone did just comment. Your comments whizzed down, but someone did just comment in capitals, lawless London, and that is obviously a theme that we're running with here at Westmonster. Somebody else commented as well, just saying, look, if you pick topics such as child sexual exploitation, with regard to Asian grooming gangs, and then you talk about knife crime and violent crime, that commenter said then, look, these are issues that politicians don't like talking about. And clearly they don't like talking about it because we're not seeing this kind of mass political outrage.
Well, it's nothing.
You would expect.
It's virtually nothing.
But you can guarantee here at Westmonster, of course, that we will relentlessly be talking about these issues, trying to keep pressure up and trying to really hammer these points home, because we do think that these are issues right at the very fabric of British society and things that need to be rectified, really. But yeah, do keep your comments coming in. Someone there again commented just saying, you know, really, why are we not seeing more from Sadiq Khan on this. Maybe he's too busy looking for mean tweets. And this is a question that does seem to be at the heart of this. You know, have politicians, I'm interested to see what you guys think, have politicians got their priorities a bit wrong here? Are they looking to highlight things that maybe are easy for them to win votes on, as opposed to actually getting into the weeds and the dirt of these tough issues facing Britain?
We've got Barbara saying 2 police hurt with a sword in Manchester. I did see that one as well. We're going to look into that. Also Patrick saying, good stuff guys, very right, thank you very much. Look, what we're going to keep doing here, whether people like it or they don't like it, is we're going to be analysing what is going on in our country, the reality, the cold, hard facts of what was going on. And the cold, hard facts are, we've got systematic child abuse going on by grooming gangs up and down the country. That's a fact. We've also got people being shot, you know, often not exclusively, but often very young men or even boys being stabbed and shot. It seems to have been somewhat accepted now. No one wants to talk about it. There's no outrage about it. I'd be very surprised if you've even heard about the 14-year-old boy that was shot in London. And yet, you know, to have a young teenager. And the impact, think about this, guys. Think about the impact. If that's going on where you live, and that's your brother, it's your friend, it's your schoolmate, it's in your road, what sort of effect does that have on the other children growing up in that area? If you're
it normalises it, doesn't it?
Well, but if you're a 14-year-old growing up in an area where other 14-year-olds are being shot, what sort of future are we giving these young people when these areas, when there's a complete lack of outrage, when there's a complete lack of action, when we cut in police, when this isn't even a national story? And again, you know, we need your support. Please do give us a retweet. Please do give us a like. Please go to westmonster.com/support, because we are going to relentlessly keep highlighting the reality of what is going on in our country, because someone has to.
Absolutely. Well, guys, just to touch on some of your comments here, saying politicians, Chris Sutherland saying politicians aren't raising it because it's their failure. Alexander Smith saying guns, knives, acid attacks and homemade bombs here in Bristol. A person has been arrested for, apparently. So,
well, please send us a link if you've got a link to the story at all, or if you've got any more information.
He's just saying it's total lawlessness. Alan Donaldson's been in touch saying we have a weak government with lots of weak politicians. That's why we're in a mess. And Leonard Augustine tapping into something that I think a lot of your comments seem to be highlighting here, saying the politicians have forgotten about the people. So it's always interesting here to get your views on Westmonster. Thank you very much for getting in touch with us.
Now, guys, we are going to leave you with a good news story, because we do like to put a smile on your face before we leave you, if we possibly can. And I love this one. I mean, it's an absolute cracker. We'll just bring it up there. It's on. Go and visit westmonster.com after the show, guys. It's on there. Yet another study, this one by Zed Yen. Basically, they've looked at all the financial sort of hubs in the world. They've done a ranking of the top cities, the 110 cities they've done. So this is, you know, this is pretty big bit. And they've basically found, would you believe it or not, London #1. Now, this is interesting, because we heard a lot, didn't we, about London losing its financial place and it was going to go down and everything. There has been some cities, believe it or not, that have gone well down the rankings. And one that's tumbled down, 9 places in fact, is Frankfurt, which is actually the only other EU city in the top 20. So you know when you hear that...
That's the one where the head of Goldman Sachs said he was going to move to Frankfurt, didn't he?
I think so. So when you hear about this complete and utter garbage, yet again, just look at the facts. You hear this garbage that the City of London's going to go to hell and it's going to be hell in a handcart, and Brexit Britain's going to be some sort of economic backwater. You look at that, London #1. Zurich's also in there. But the only other EU city, Frankfurt, they've gone down. They've gone down 9 places. They've gone down like a sack of spuds.
It's funny, isn't it?
It isn't like you're seeing here. It isn't like you're seeing, according to the expert analysis, some rising tide of sort of EU financial powerhouses, ready to take the global opportunities because Brexit Britain's going to fall apart. It's a load of absolute cobblers. It's a narrative being built by people who ain't got a clue what they're talking about, who wanted you to believe that we were going to have economic hardship when we voted leave, who wanted you to believe there was going to be a recession, who wanted you to believe there was going to be a punishment budget. And now they want you to believe that if we go ahead before Brexit and leave the single market and leave the customs union, there's going to be more job losses and London's going to lose its place. Just look at their track records.
There we are.
Absolute rubbish. So, have a nice day. Have a look at Westmonster. Look at the facts, look at what the experts are saying, and don't listen to any of this conspiracy theory bollocks, because it's just a load of people in some, basically talking to each other is the way I see it. I don't think anyone in the country is really cares about this type of stuff. They care about what's going on in terms of our young people's being sexually abused, they care about our young men being shot and stabbed to death in London, and they care about the future prosperity of this country. And if you look at studies like this, it shows you that it's in good hands. Brexit Britain has got a very bright future indeed. So thank you very much for joining us. Anything else, Patrick?
No, just to say thank you very much. We've had loads of your comments coming in. I'm just going to go through a couple of them. Dominic Webster's actually calling for bring back the death penalty for people like terrorists and murderers.
Well, maybe we'll do a show on that, I think.
Yeah, the death penalty is a very interesting topic. Obviously, there's strong arguments for and against, so it's always an emotive subject. And we do get a lot of people seemingly commenting from Westminster in favour of the death penalty. So it's an interesting debate to maybe be had in wider society. But just echoing what Michael said there, always a pleasure to do these live broadcasts for you here at Westminster. Thank you very much. Please do go to our support page and give generously.
We need your support. Yeah. Westmonster.com/support. We really need it.
But a lot of guys just saying, Tanya's saying cheers guys, Alison thank you, Leslie saying keep up the good work, don't you worry, we will. And most importantly here, Joanne Sherratt saying real news. That's what we're striving for, Joanne. Thank you.
Catch you on Wednesday, 1 o'clock. Have a great day. See you then.
Take care.